to the Mischief Maker broadcast, where chaos, creativity, and common sense collide. Your host, Joel Freeman, was kicked out of high school in Alberta, Canada. He left home at 17 and hitchhiked around North America as a long-haired hippie and dope-smoking fool. He made a 180-degree change, becoming one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA. As a professional speaker, Joel has traveled to well over 55 countries. His many books have been published in 28 foreign translations. Pieces from his Black History collection have been seen by millions at the United Nations and many other venues. And now, the Chief Mischief Maker himself, Dr. Joel A. Freeman.
Hi, Bigger Baby Joel here. Guess what? I did some financial planning. Turns out, I can retire at 97 and live comfortably for about 18 minutes.
Well, there we have it. Bigger Baby Joel has spoken, and I hope he's not correct. Anyway, it's just a joy to be with you on this show, the Mischief Maker Show. You can go to the QR code above to figure out what is a mischief maker. There's a description, a definition, and then now, I can deputize you to become a mischief maker in your part of the world once you understand the definition of it. And hopefully this show that you watch on a weekly basis, or maybe see it on Spotify or on a BBC affiliated station anywhere in the world, or on YouTube, or whatever the show app is, we welcome you. Of course, if you're live, you've got the special powers to be able to ask questions. And so we want you to be listening carefully. We're talking tonight about the process of invention. And I'm talking about physical invention, coming up with an idea, going through the patent process wherever you are in the world to know when to take it international, to hit the North American market, and then go beyond that, whatever it is that you're involved with. The gentleman tonight, his name is Bill Wright. And I met him, I guess about, I don't know how many months ago. And he was telling me his story. And I said, you've got to come on the Mischief Maker Show. Come on. Because we need to understand the process of the creative process, the inventive process, the iterative process. And my closest brush with doing any type of invention is this thing. This is the Atari joystick controller. Remember this back? I can't remember how long ago, 80s, 90s or something like that. 80s, I guess it was. And I don't know if you remember, if you were playing with the joystick control and your left hand, if you're left-handed or right-handed, I should say, and you're doing this thing, and after a while you get this fatigue in your wrist because you're holding on and it's absorbing all the shock. Well, I came up with a wrist fatigue eliminator. And it was just basically this base for it. It's for left-handed, right-handed people. And I went through the whole brain damage of the inventive process, got a patent for it. And then guess what? Technology advanced. And they came up with different hand controllers and no longer needed the old Atari. I think it's 2600. I can't remember the number. They no longer needed that. And so I learned a lot through that process. But we're going to take some meandering questions and courses and all this. And we've already heard from Bigger Baby Joel. And now we're going to hear a song that I wrote. It's called Gotta Know Your Why. And I want you to listen closely to the lyrics of this song. And I hope you enjoy it. Ready? Let's hit it.
There's always someone doubting, throwing shade across your name. People pointing, whisper, shouting, trying to make you feel some shame. But when your wire's steady burning like a beacon in the night, know who can pull you when your heart knows what is right. Gotta know your why, connected to the most high. When pressure mounts, look it in the eye. Valleys low or mountains high, it's the truth that breaks the lies. You can carry any burden when you know your why. It's always something, some new trouble, some new test. Plans that crumble with no warning. The weary have no rest. But when your why is carved in granite, not in sand that shifts away, know what can break your spirit or derail the rest of your day. There's always some time entangled, dreams delayed or doors shut tight. Moments where the clock feels ruthless, stretching morning into night. But if your why becomes your compass, pointing forward through the weight, no one can steal your promise or rewrite what God creates. There's always some place uncertain, foreign ground or strange skies, where your footsteps in quicksand and your courage is surprised. But when your why becomes your guide, like a lighthouse bright and tall, nowhere can stop your journey when your purpose starts to call. There's always some method missing, steps unclear or roads unpaved. Times you feel the silence louder than the answers that you crave. But if your why is strong and rooted, faith will show you what to do. No, how can halt your progress when your why pulls you through? Gotta know your why, connected to the most high. When pressure mounts, look it in the eye. Valleys low, mountains high, it's the truth that breaks the lies. You can carry any burden when you know your why. So when your journey feels uncertain and battles multiply, and you're searching for a reason when your plans go awry, remember purpose isn't fragile when it's anchored from above. Your why is rooted deep in God and carried on a life of faith and love.
Well, when you know your why, you can bear any who, any what, any when, anywhere, anyhow. And that comes into the realm of invention, creativity. And tonight I want to bring on Bill Wright, because we're going to talk about the inventor of the stand-up lawnmower. And it's just so Bill, come on in. And we want to learn more about his creative process in putting together the one of the most incredible inventions in lawn mowing, the stand-up lawnmower. Now, Bill, I guess, are you coming in?
It's really,
he's working at it.
yep,
He's buffering.
hear you. I'm just going to,
He's moving. There he is.
okay. I just want to say I'm very happy to be with you tonight. It's a great privilege, and I hope everybody enjoys the show. Thanks for having it.
So, Bill, welcome. So you were, as a kid, tell us about your upbringing, where you were brought up, because I know you've done you're named in a whole bunch of patents, and we're going to learn more about that as it's related to a stand-up lawnmower. But tell us, let's put a pin in that and just step back into your childhood. Where, how many kids? Yeah, what was that like?
So I grew up in a little bit upstate New York, about 30 miles north of New York City, in Chappaqua, which is a little town about 30 miles up the river. And my father was the town plumber, and my mom had been a nurse. My father had been through World War II as a pilot. But when he became a plumber, he had tools around the house, and my mother was pretty mechanical too, and she encouraged me in that. But one of the things that she said I would do, and I can't even remember some of this stuff, but I would get those tools and I would take like her vacuum cleaner apart. She'd catch me with it half disassembled. But the thing about her was, and I really attribute a lot of my direction to her, because she would encourage that. She would say, okay, you can just keep taking it apart, whatever you want to do, but as long as you put it back together and it still works. And I would do that with her different things. The other thing is I started realizing that I could repair our neighbors' bicycles and lawnmowers. And then I started putting things together. And my mom there was a junk day once a week in our town. And I'd ride my bike around the town and look for where people would put their junk out as opposed to garbage. It would be washing machines, dryers, bicycles, old lawnmowers, things of that nature. And when I'd identify a pile of junk that I wanted, if I could get my mom to take me out in the car before my dad came home for dinner, we could get some of that stuff before the junk man got it the next morning. And there was a little old barn behind our house that turned out to be mine. My family didn't use it for anything, but I filled that barn up with all that junk. And I would take this off of that and put it onto that, and I would barter with the neighbors. And I never really had to buy parts. I could find something on another thing and use it. And I got that acquaintance with mechanical stuff like that. And then my dad would take me out on plumbing jobs and teach me the name of all the tools. And I would be his gopher, go back to the truck, get this and bring this back, everything like that. So I learned about tools. And I'll skip a lot of the details. Oh, one of the things that was kind of great is like my parents' car broke down when I was 9, and they left it in the back and didn't touch it for a couple of years. And I began to beg them if I could fiddle with it, see if I could get it running again. And I did, and they said I could have it. So I made trails through the woods, and it didn't have any brakes. We would fly through the woods with no brakes. Anyway, the neighbor kids would give me 25 cents or a quart of gasoline, and I would let them drive it. So that's another thing. Anyway, so pretty soon
You're
I was
spinning donuts in the back 40, right? You're just doing all this kind of stuff.
No brakes.
Oh
The
man,
thing had no brakes.
oh,
So anyway, then when I went through high school, the guidance counselors talked to me and they said I should become an engineer, but I didn't know what an engineer was. But I just signed up for that, and I went to an engineering school for 1 year, and I picked mechanical engineering, and I only went 1 year. And during that year, I believed I was called to become a pastor. So I switched over to Bible school for 3 years. And while I was there, I fixed all the professors and the other students' cars. This was down in Florida now. And as I graduated, I realized within 30 days of going to that Bible school that I was not cut out to be a pastor. But I decided that since I'd transferred from one school to the other once, I wouldn't do it again. And when I graduated, I immediately became a car mechanic. And I did pretty well at that. But anyway, the third year of being a car mechanic, and by this time I was married and started to have children too. And then regrettably and sadly, I'm divorced. But that with my then wife, we had several children. But during the early years, I started this lawn maintenance company along with being a car mechanic. And this is going to be tying into some of the inventive process. And
let's pause for a moment. I want to hear that old saying, but what was the first time that you realized that that you were different than most people in regard to seeing a problem and wanting to solve it in a mechanical sort of way? Do you remember that?
I was like that as a child with my friends. There was always something mechanical, and I would analyze it and try to fix it for my friends. Or often their fathers, would have a problem, and they would call me. Another thing is I was the local sewing machine mechanic. A lot of the women in my neighborhood knew that I could fix their sewing machines, so I'd get calls for that. But it was just at a very young age, I could figure out this mechanical stuff, and I was very curious about it. And I just was a sponge soaking up this mechanical stuff. Yeah.
So let's go back to the old adage. You were just about to say something, and I interrupted you.
Oh, you've heard the old adage, necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that to be true. I can't remember inventing anything out of thin air, so to speak. Everything had to do with something that came right before it, and a need to do something a little better than what it was. And so people ask me, how did you invent this stand-on lawnmower? Well, there were several other inventions that were not stand-on lawnmowers that gradually became closer and closer to this. The next logical thing was to stand on the mower. So these things were not, and this is, I noticed, when you read about technology, most of the things you read about are an incremental change from what was just before it. Almost everything is like that. They build on this and they build on that. I think it was 15 years ago, Google bought DeepMind in England. And they weren't really thinking about exactly what's going on today, but just they were working on something. I think they were trying to make it play games or something, like maybe chess or something. But these one thing leads to another with everything. And I believe that's built into us. Other people use it in other ways that I'm not good at. For example, like journalists would have skills that I don't have, but they build on what they've learned, they can keep going. They study things, and every, like maybe medicine, maybe people who know the law or whatever, preachers, when they get good at it, they've learned so much, and they just keep building on what they just did before. So that's how inventions are. They come from being involved in something so much that you can see the need. And then if you've experienced other solutions that remind you of a new solution with an adjustment, so you can take what solved an old problem and tweak it so that it solves a newer problem. And you can get inspiration. Yeah.
Now, so as a kid, I'm sorry, I just something that came as you're talking is that as a kid, how did failure get handled? Was it punished? Was it ignored? Or was it reframed as a learning tool, if you will, or a resource?
Wow, that's a good question. And I would have to give you two separate answers under two different categories.
Okay.
Because I believe that I had a deficient childhood in a lot of ways. And I'm very grateful that I've been able to learn more about that as I've gotten older, so that I've been able to work on those things. But I would say that whereas failing to do some things, I was met with punishment, probably an unjust punishment, because in some cases I didn't know enough about what I was doing to not do what the person wanted me to do or not do. However, I will say that my mother, who seemed to be very encouraging to me about my mechanical endeavors, I believe I failed many times, and she was very positive. And then I learned from her as I went into when I started my companies that were involved in manufacturing. What she said to me reminded me of what I had to do, because often I would try something and it wouldn't work. I began to realize that was like when my mother said, "Why don't you try it again some other way? Don't give up, try think of something else and try that." And so let's say you try 5 things and they don't work, but the 6th one does. And the thing that there's an economic thing with inventions as well that people are interested in. But let's say you lose $100 on each of those 5 things and you lost $500, but the 6th one makes you $1 million. It's really worth it to do a lot of mistakes. And I'm just giving a little tiny analogy of it.
Was
But
it
I can tell-
Edison said, "I've learned 10,000 ways not to do the light bulb." Was it? Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, well, something like that. But I can testify to the fact that there are so many failures in my rear view mirror of things I tried and things my people tried too. And this is something you do when you have a company of engineers, that you need to encourage them to fail.
Mhm.
If there's fear, if there's a fear that your one thing that you're working on is not going to work, it really won't get off the ground.
Yeah, it
But
won't work.
if everybody's encouraged to try it, and they do it with a certain amount of wisdom, it's not willy-nilly. So that people are making educated guesses and they get better at those guesses and they get confidence that it's somewhat likely to work or not. But still, you want to be able to fail, because a lot of times the failure itself teaches you something that stays with you for all the rest of your inventions.
Mhm.
Like that, there's like, don't do this because it always does that, and then you just stay away from that thing that
Yeah.
you thought would work but doesn't. So these failures are so important to invention. Yes.
Now, the other kids growing up, how did they view you? As kind of a Superman, as someone who's a little bit odd, a cool guy? I mean, how were you connecting when you were so involved in fixing?
I don't think I was connecting very well. I had to learn that later in life. But they seemed to pay attention to me. I often would come up with some kind of go-kart or whatever, and they'd all want to ride on it. There's no doubt about it. Or sometimes I needed help, like pushing something up a hill or
Uh-huh.
doing something, and everybody was willing to help me, and it was fun. I mean, we all had fun doing stuff like this, and I didn't really get any. Nobody was saying like you're weird or anything. They were just, and I was a little bit of a loner. I
Mhm.
had some close friends that I hung around with, right around my house, with the neighbors directly around me that I was friendly with, and we had some grand times, doing stuff like tree houses and doing stuff with ropes and just crazy stuff. That anytime you can be outside playing with stuff in the trees or in the woods, and you got engines and bicycle frames and wheels and stuff, you can always come up with something fun. I think
So-
later in life, though, I do believe I needed to learn about relating with people. I'm still learning, but I didn't focus on that when I was in high
No.
school and before. No.
That may be even been your connection with someone, seeing the joy in their face when their bike got fixed or something like that, and that connection
It was
that
fun.
you had
Yeah.
with the fulfillment. Was there a model in your life, a teacher, an uncle, a next door neighbor that modeled resilience or inventiveness or creativity?
No, I don't think so. There was I think the most encouraging person was my mother.
Uh-huh.
The second most encouraging person was my father. And I would say that I was given a lot of books I could read about it,
Mm-hmm.
about inventors and stuff. And my parents gave me those books. I was very inspired by reading these books about people like Edison, but others. I think one of my favorite was not really considered an inventor, but I guess he is an inventor, Henry Ford. I was very impressed with the whole, the beginning of Ford and the Model
Mhm.
A and the Model T, all that stuff, and the assembly lines, and I had that in the back of my mind the whole time I was doing stuff. Like I was thinking, I would like it someday if I could have an assembly line, and I eventually did,
Mm.
And manufacture. It was so there were things that I read that led to it. Oh, the other thing is being a mechanic for several years.
Yes.
I was exposed to very good design and very bad design and everything in between, in terms of how cars were put together, things that would make them durable or not, or easy to repair or not, or a delight to drive or not. And I learned a lot of that stuff, and it became an emphasis when I was making lawnmowers to make them a delight and make them look beautiful. They weren't not just functional, but often we could take something that had a function and make it look good too. So there was, but I got a lot of that from reading and just being around things. Yeah.
Now, was there, before inventing the stand-up lawnmower, what frustrations in your life, your work life or whatever, were quietly preparing you to innovate?
Okay, so there was a window of time when the stand-on mower kind of came forth. And what was going on, I will take you to approximately 1981 is when I started a lawn maintenance company. And after a couple of years of doing that, and I believe I had around 6 or 8 guys working for me by then, maybe 3, maybe on 3 trucks. The way it turned out to be the best, state of the art then, was to use these large walk-behind commercial mowers. And you may have seen mowers where they have these giant handles that you squeeze to steer them. You squeeze the right one and it turns right, and you squeeze. And they're very heavy. They weigh nearly 1,000 pounds. Anyway, very powerful. They usually have 2 or 3 blades under the front deck. Anyway, my guys would cut grass with those all day. And eventually I studied the whole process of cutting a lawn and what were the ways to cut it efficiently and nicely and all that. And I won't get into too much of that, but I will say this, that in that study, I found out that most of my guys were walking about 40 miles a day. And I could hire people. I did that for about 15 years, by the way.
40 miles a day. Wow. Whew.
Yeah. But my company was going on for about 15 years before I sold it. And one of the things that, but we didn't do it the same way. The last few years was way different than the first few years. So this is my point. We had a sort of a revolving door of employees. And the guys that would come on would be about 18 or 19 years old. And they would quit when they were about 22 and say, I can't do it anymore. It's too hard. We would get guys come out of the Marines and they just, they'd been through boot camp and everything that I've never done. And they would say, oh, this is not going to be a problem. And they would be sick for 2 days after cutting grass for 1 day.
Wow.
It was so intense. Anyway, that led to, we have to figure out how to make sure these guys don't quit, because it's walking 40 miles a day. And so we tried various things like getting mowers that you could ride on, but they slowed us down so much. We couldn't, we cut about 30% grass.
Really?
When we were sitting on a mower versus walking. Then we found out you could get these sulkies, they called them, and they were a seat with a tire on each side of you.
Yes. Like
a little trailer. We tried those. Those were a little bit better than a riding mower. These walk behinds are so maneuverable. That's why you can cut so much grass. They're super maneuverable and they do very steep hills. Okay, so one day.
Hold on to this. Hold on to that, because we need to take a break for our sponsor. Our sponsors generally is Rosetta Universe. But today we're going to have a different sponsor. Rosetta Universe is generally our sponsor, but our sponsor regularly today we're going to have something about David and Goliath. So watch this. It's about 90 seconds or so, and then I'm going to make a few comments. We're going to get right back, Bill, to what you're talking about.
David and Goliath. It's hard to find anyone who hasn't heard about this epic drama, and we all can relate to being in a position of powerlessness. A time in each of our lives when everything looks dark, until something out of the ordinary happens. Guess what? The David and Goliath story is not a fantasy. It actually happened right here in Israel. In fact, here is the stream bed, the Wadi, where David picked up the 5 smooth stones. And here is the valley of Elah. Experts aren't sure about the exact spot where David killed Goliath, but it is proven to be the actual valley where it happened. And I am now standing on the hill where experts believe the Israelite army camped. Off in the distance, you can see Tel Azekah, where the Philistine army camped, and somewhere in the middle, David killed the giant. Hi, I'm Joel Freeman, and I lead 5-star rated all-inclusive and educational tours to Israel. You can come to Israel with the Freeman Institute tours to experience the Valley of Elah and to pick up your own 5 smooth stones. Check out the website, then call me. Ask me for the 3 reasons why our tours of Israel are different from the rest.
Ladies and gentlemen, all around the world, wherever you're watching this, you're welcome to come on the next tour. Just go to israelcrazy.com. It'll tell you exactly the time, the area we're going to, the itinerary, and where we leave from and where we go to. And then we're adding on 6 days in Jordan, this next tour. So there's some spots still available. And so just check it out, israelcrazy.com, and then get in touch, and I will share with you. And also, I have this thing called the Jack Johnson belt. This is a belt that weighs about 10 pounds, the only one like it in the world. In fact, in a couple of days, I'm going to be giving one of these to Larry Holmes, who was boxing royalty. And we've had folks like Sugar Shane Mosley and, oh my goodness, so many others, Bernard Hopkins, Roberto Duran. They all say this is the most beautiful belt they've ever seen. And that's up against WBF, IBF, and all the rest of the other belts that are out there. And it's actually, this belt is a donation piece. The only way you can get it, making only 700 worldwide, is by going to a place called jackjohnsonspeaks.com, jackjohnsonspeaks.com, and then it'll show you how you can acquire one of these belts. Make a donation, tax deductible if you're in the United States, and then we send it out to you. Anywhere in the world, this is available. Well, thanks so much, and let's get back to the show with Bill Wright, the inventor of the stand-up lawnmower. You have him to thank if you have one on your property anywhere in the world. Bill, so you were let's step up where you were just starting to tell the story, the genesis. While guys walking 40 miles, getting ragged out by the end of the day, they had nothing left, and this is kind of the necessity, the mother of invention. Can you bring us up from there?
So I was trying to figure out a way. I wanted them to be able to be as maneuverable as a walk behind, but not have to walk. And that was the necessity. How can I let them ride instead of walk, but not hamper the maneuverability and the steep hill ability of walk behinds? And the stand-on platform, I have to admit, just popped into my head. It wasn't
really. Huh.
It's popped into my head. I might have been in the shower or something, but it just popped into my head that we've got to keep the walk behind, but not walk. And that was the closest thing I could get to it. And
so they could still walk, but they could then take a rest if they want to, and turn a corner, walking, whatever they want.
Yeah. The first thing I invented, and some people may be familiar with, the sulky that you stand on. It's attachable to a walk behind mower. It has to be one of those big commercial walk behind mowers, but they usually have one tire between your feet, and it acts like a little tiny trailer. Your foot is on each side of the tire on a platform. We also made them with 2 tires with the platform between them as an alternative, but we made them both ways.
Would that help give them some body anguish when they're moving, turning a zero? degree
there's
turn?
an arm that's attached to the back of the mower that has a pivot on it that lets the arm go up and down like this. Let's say this is the back of the mower. That arm will go up and down over the bump, but it will not allow it to twist. And then on the other end of the arm is the platform with a pivot that's vertical to let it trail. And that won't let it twist either. So the length from the mower to the wheel cannot twist. It can only go up and down or pivot, but not twist. And that allows you to put all your weight on one foot or the other foot, and it won't tilt it. Anyway, that little platform is so small that when you turn a zero radius turn with the walk behind mower, the radius that the mower goes with the handlebars is greater than the radius that your body goes through. So there's no restriction on the spinning around of these mowers in terms like a big mower with 4 tires with a steering wheel. It's very cumbersome to turn around at the end of every row and around every tree and all this, where these walk behinds just zip around these things, and this works like that. So the other thing is these mowers.
How long did you live with this idea before you started acting on it in your head?
Probably a few days. It was really so I skipped some other inventions that I made that didn't have to do with stand-on mowers. So I already had a welding shop, and I had steel, and I had the machines to cut the steel. So it was very quick. As soon as I had that idea, I was back in the shop and cutting metal and making one. Now, the thing is, I wanted to say something about the idea that you can ride behind the mower. Very important thing. Most of these mowers were designed to have the ability to go, say, 1 mile an hour or 1.5 to 2.5 miles an hour. And there was a means within the different brands of mowers to let you change the speed in that way through the transmission. And when there were some companies just beginning to make their mowers go a little bit faster and more controllable using hydraulics instead of belts on these walk lines. They kind of took the technology of that off of what are known as mid-mount Z riding mowers. So the two wheels could be the speed of the two wheels could be adjusted by 2 different levers, and they connected those to the handlebars on the walk behind too. This enabled the mower to be a little more agile, speed, and a little bit faster. Well, as soon as we put these sulky, we call them stand-on sulkies. The brand name is Velke sulky, and that's another story why we named it that. But anyway, back to the story. The mowers it was no longer necessary to limit the mowers to 2.5 or 3 miles an hour. People started customizing their mowers. Eventually, the factories, there were about 20 brands of commercial mowers at the time, and this thing could fit on any one of them. We made adapters to fit on all of them.
Really?
Well, these companies started making them to go 4 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour, 6 miles an hour. I think the highest they ever got on the walk behinds was maybe 6 or 7 miles an hour. But if you take the agility and the lack of fatigue plus the miles per hour change, people started cutting grass at least twice as fast as they had been a few years earlier. And
And how wide did they go? 42 inches, 48 inches? How wide was the cut?
The very biggest ones were 72s, but they were not very popular. The most popular sizes were 36, 48, and 52 inch wide. The 36 has 2 blades, and the 48 and 52 have 3 blades each. But people started cutting grass so much faster that it caused these things spread over the whole United States. There was a while where I was selling 15,000 of them a year, of those sulkies.
Wow!
And these were going on just in the United States. And when that happened, it caused the pricing of grass cutting to drop. The people who used to get charged $30 a cut could get their lawn cut for $18 or $19 or $20 a cut. And what that did is it brought a huge number of people into the lawn mowing customer base. They call it the total addressable market went way up because now people could afford it. So these lawn companies started growing, and more people got their grass cut, and more people who got their grass cut lived closer together to somebody else who was getting their grass cut. So everybody's route in their lawn companies got shorter and shorter and shorter until some people didn't even have to load their equipment back up. They could just cut down the street, maybe skip a yard or two, but they wouldn't even have to load their truck up because the density of these lawn jobs got so close. But we think our sulky was hugely instrumental in causing a great upsurge over about a 10-year period of lawn maintenance, professional lawn maintenance. So we were doing that for a while.
Now, let me just ask you this, Bill. When you were between, you had the idea in the shower or wherever, and you're living it's bopping around your head for a few days. When you shared it with anybody, did anybody come back to you with negativity and, oh, that'll never work or anything like that?
Always.
Who was that? Or if you don't want to mention names, but what kind of reaction did you get from that?
I will say that everything I've ever invented or was on the team of inventors, because eventually my engineers started inventing stuff more than me. I was there for the invention, but I wasn't the primary inventor. I was just a helper after a while. But the thing was, every invention has negative people about it. But I will say that the most negative invention I ever came up with was our most famous one, and that is the stand-on mower. The stand-on mower is basically you stand on the lawnmower and there's no little trailer behind it anymore, and the platform is part of the mower right between the drive wheels, and you're standing right in that zero turning point, and when you spin the mower around, you don't feel any forces on your body because you're right at that axis that's
you're at the epicenter.
Exactly. So if you're on a sulky, you're a little bit behind that zero radius turn. And when you're spinning real fast, you kind of have to hang on because it wants to throw you off. So you feel that force. But anyway, when these stand-on mowers came out, we had all kinds of naysayers. People were going to get killed on them. Nobody will want to do that. When you can sit on it, why would you want to stand up if you can sit down? Oh, well, because you can cut 30 or 40% more grass in a day. And so, or you can do a 30-degree slope with a sit down mower. You can only go maybe 21 degrees. And also, if you tip over on a walk behind, you probably are going to die. If you are on a stand-on mower and it starts to go over, you just let it go. You just step back from it and let it go. And it doesn't tip, it slides because it's so low center of gravity. So there's so many safety things, but people said, no, these things, they're no good. You can't. Oh, and all the lawnmower competitors told all their dealers that when we come calling to sell them our mowers, to go ahead and buy them, because they said they'll never amount to anything. And one thing led to another. Within a few years, hundreds and hundreds of dealers across the country were selling more stand-on mowers than they were sit-down riders. So these companies thought they were naysayers to their own detriment. You know what I'm saying? They didn't think we were going to amount to anything. So it was kind of fun. Later on, I licensed these patents, or for a while, we actually made all the stand-on mowers for John Deere for a while in our own factory, and just painted them green and put yellow wheels on them for them, and everything. But that was the only company I ever did that with. But all the other ones either got a license or we actually would prevent them from making them. Eventually, these patents expired. So patents in the United States expire about 20 years. I can't hear you, Joel.
So you went on for, is it 17 or 20 years?
They changed the law.
Okay.
It used to be 17 years from the date of issue.
Yeah.
And they changed it to 20 years from the date of application. And what they did, that matched some other countries' laws, and we signed a treaty to be like them. But it's actually a little bit better law, because what was going on in the United States is people would get, because it was from the date of issue, people would apply for the patent and purposely take 5 years to get it to not issue.
Oh.
That way it would extend the expiration date. But the other problem was that whoever applied first would get the patent. So if somebody applied 1 day later, they wouldn't get the patent. And we changed that too. It's now it's the invention date rather than the application date. So I think the laws are a lot better now than they were. They create the right incentives.
So what trade-offs were you dealing with? In other words, people say there's a difference between a solution and a trade-off. We don't always have solutions. Everything's a trade-off. You give up something to gain another thing.
Good question. So what comes up a lot, and I would say this is the one that you face all the time in manufacturing when you're inventing stuff that you plan to manufacture, which is most of the time what you're doing, because that's the only economic way to make it worth it. But I will say that the largest trade-off that you face, and I learned this from the one patent attorney that I used for over 20 years. He wasn't the only one I had, but he was the one I kept the longest, and he was fantastic. But what he said he noticed in his years of being a patent attorney was that people would tend to invent things that they didn't assess whether there would be enough money in it. Would people pay for that gadget? And so that's a trade-off. In other words, would you pay $5 for a device that'll do this? Yes. Would you pay $100 for a device to do that? The answer is no. And that attorney said that too many people would invent things that nobody would pay for that much. Sometimes it's because the invention was thought of kind of before its time, and it maybe the technology hadn't gotten developed enough to be able to manufacture it cheaply enough, or people's sentiment hadn't gotten to the point where they really wanted it bad enough. And there's different things that go on to cause it to really start selling and all that. However, if you constantly make inventions that nobody wants, what you'll do is you'll get a patent issued and it'll flop. It'll never sell enough to even pay the patent fees and the lawyer. So you have to, that's a real big trade-off right there, where like our mowers, for example, tended to be they were more costly than a plain old walk behind. They tended to be cheaper than sit-down riders, but they were more costly than walk behinds. So in order for somebody to pay an extra $1,000 for our mowers, pay $5,000 instead of $4,000, they'd have to think twice. That's a trade-off. Things like that.
And how did you bridge that gap with them to get them to pony up the other $1,000 for your machine? What marketing ads or third-party endorsement?
So in our case, it was important that people understood why it was worth it economically. So we bent over backwards trying to help people understand. This would be part of our advertising, our marketing, our social media presence, and everything. It's basically you want everybody to know when you pay that extra $1,000, you can cut, say you might cut $45,000 worth of grass retail in a year with a walk behind, but the same person on a stand-on might cut 70,000.
Wow.
So why worry about $1,000 when you're going to make another 30? It's that you have to do that with some mathematics. You can put that on a whiteboard. We did this often in our sales and marketing meetings. We take videos of this and everything, but you can do the math and you can see that spending a little money can pay off, when you do something every day. Now, one thing about our mowers is you can't justify $1,000 for your own personal lawn. You can buy one for your own personal lawn, but you will not save $30,000 by only using it an hour a week.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to use these things over 30 hours a week, maybe 40 hours a week during this cutting season. So you have to, that's the way they pay for themselves in commercial use. Yeah.
It's like owning a jet, you got to use it or it'll fall apart.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's trade-offs.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there's also a cultural thing when you have a team of people inventing. There's sort of a well-being of the team that you want to cultivate, so that all your people that have the different skill sets that apply to whether or not we can make this in our factory, and what new things do we have to figure out how to do to manufacture it compared to what we've been manufacturing, and the different people that hone their skills come to the meetings where we're going to decide how to make it. In other words, it's not just to be able to function, but we have to make it manufacturable for a good cost.
Mm-hmm.
You have a team that's joyful and spirited to contribute. It's amazing what that little team of people can do together that no one of us could have done by ourselves. And I wasn't ready for that. I didn't see that coming, but it was an amazing phenomenon once it got going.
I have a question in that, but I want to kind of come around the loop. Is what was the lowest moment in the developing process, and what kept you from quitting?
Oh, it's funny. It's funny. You have some good questions, because, like, how would you know that we had these low moments? But we did, you know. If you want to tie it to the inventing process and not so much the business itself, because I think I had a few more lower moments keeping the business alive a few times outside of inventing, you know, just in production and stuff like that. However, I would say when you put a bunch of hope in a way of doing it, and then you put it all together, it might take weeks or days or whatever, and then you go out to try to do it. That's why I really like it. The way, what's his name? Elon Musk always said he was glad they blew up another rocket because they learned something.
Yeah.
Because that's what you have to think like. And I was thinking, wow, he really has it right. Because when we did something and it didn't work, it was discouraging. But we just had to keep on saying, well, okay, let's try it another way. That didn't work. We could cross that off the list. You know, we'll think about it again and do a bunch of brainstorming, or, you know, fix what was wrong with it or whatever. And those were discouraging times, but you just have to keep on trying and trying and trying and not give up. I guess you have to be a little bit optimistic that you're going to figure it out at the end, and you almost always do. You almost always do.
So as a young kid, you mentioned you I don't want to put words in your mouth, but didn't connect that well with other people.
Right.
How did you step outside of your comfort zone now as a leader of a team, a group of people inventing, and then an assembly line, and now marketing? How did you transcend all that and help to bring inspiration to people one-on-one and also collectively?
I would say that there were a couple of milestones. Okay, one of them was when I was 16 years old, and I had been working for my father only, except for on my own. I was cutting neighbors' grass and fixing sewing machines and whatnot, but that was all one-on-one stuff. But I was extremely shy. I was very, very shy, and I didn't talk unless I had to. Well, for some reason, I can't remember everything that led to it, but I got my first real job, and it was pumping gas at a gas station just a few hundred yards from my house. And they forced me to talk to every customer. I asked them if they wanted their oil checked and their windshield cleaned and this and that, you know, and give them change. I had to go back in the building to make their change. Nobody used credit cards back then. And then that forced me to talk. And that was a milestone that I really learned something from that job. I had to talk to people, just strangers, you know. Okay, another thing was when I started the mowing business and I started giving bids, I had to go and visit hundreds of properties and talk to the owners and see if they would let us cut their grass. So I got just fluid with it. I just started finding, you know, you have to talk with people and reach an agreement, and sometimes you have to explain things, and and you have to be amenable to their wishes, and try to compromise about things. And it was just a lot of fun. I didn't know I could do it, but I learned it gradually. And then when I had employees, I remember how hard it was for me the first time when I had a new truck to send them out for the first time with the truck without me in it.
Wow.
And it was like,
that must have been tough.
So I really want to give them the keys to the truck and let them just go off into the sunset, But it was funny. They cut a lot of lawn and they came back. And then I did it multiple times. Pretty soon I had several trucks, and there were lots of people with the keys and keys to the door to the building. And you just, it just basically forced me to come out of my shell, I guess. But eventually it was no problem. And I'm very blessed to have gone through that. I feel like I've grown through that, and I have greater joy because of it.
Bill, we have got 3 minutes left, and it's gone so quickly. But here you are, a young upstart in this established industry. I mean, I don't know who. I mean, you got John Deere. I don't know how many others out there, Toro, whatever other dealers are out there, companies, and you're coming in with something brand new. How did you respond? Did you feel like they dismissed you, or what was going on inside of you? What was happening around you?
Well, I was very afraid at first. I said, how can I go against the big boys, But I somehow I just had to do it. And the further I got into it, the more I realized that it was you talk about David and Goliath. It was a disadvantage to be big in their cases.
Oh, wow.
They had too much momentum.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't fiddle with their prices as quickly as I could. They couldn't change their design. If they thought of an idea, it would take them a year to put it in their lawnmower. I mean, if I thought of something, or one of my people thought of something, we would change it within a few days.
Wow.
In fact, when we made our lawnmowers for John Deere, they wanted to make all their paperwork reflect every change. And when I signed up to do the deal, we wanted to make all the changes we did to our mowers be on their mowers at the exact same time. But so let's say it took 3 days to put something into the mower change, but their paperwork took 6 months, and they didn't want it to be in their mower until all the paperwork got done. And then this change was different for a while on a Deere versus ours. The Wright mower had a change today, but then multiply that by all the little changes that we made in the next 6 months, and they finally did the one 6 months ago. Pretty soon we had this chaotic difference between our mowers. And I finally convinced them, but we soon ended the relationship, mostly over that problem. But they eventually let us do what we wanted, and that is change their mowers right away and do the paperwork later, because it was just, anyway, the big boys are really hard. They get momentum, and they don't. So when you can be agile when you're small, and you can do so many things that they can't do. And I didn't know that at first. It turned out to be great to be small.
That's great. Well, our time is up. Bill, I'm going to put your website or contact information above when this goes out. How can people get a hold of you?
I was going to say that this is important probably to say that 2 of my sons run the company now. One is the CEO and one is the COO. And the company's thriving still in Frederick. But I'm not, it's called Wright Manufacturing.
Right.
And I'm not involved in it.
Okay.
Anymore. I'm doing some of my own stuff now. But anyway.
Okay. Maybe we'll have you back for that new stuff. Well, anyway, thanks, Bill. It's such a joy to thank you for being here. And next time we're going to have thank you, Bill. Next time we're going to have a very interesting guy. His name is Frank Kelly III. And he is going to be with us next week at the same time, and are just really looking forward to that show. Ebity, that's all, folks.
You have just experienced another episode of the Mischief Maker broadcast. Hit the subscribe button. Connect at chiefmischiefmaker.com. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And hopefully, you are now a bit closer to becoming a mischief maker in your part of the world.